Hi guys, welcome to our channel. After going through many challenges and losing one of their friends, the runners are now back determined to save him and the other runners, so they must infiltrate the only remaining city, which is the center of the enemy organization. Check the title of the movie in the description. At the beginning, a car speeds along a dirt road, and when the car stops, Jorge and Brenda are inside. When they hear the sound of the train coming, the operation begins. They devise a plan to rescue Minho and the other runners trapped in the train. Meanwhile, Jorge maneuvers his car until it meets the head of the train, allowing Thomas and Vince to easily infiltrate by distracting the enemy soldiers. Thomas attaches a chain to the last wagon on the train, and Vince barely jumps to the train's end after the tire explodes. Suddenly, an enemy ship from above appears in the sky and shoots at Jorge. As the enemy soldiers approach, Thomas and Vince climb up the train wagon, and Thomas tries to buy time for Vince, who is going to separate the end wagon by shooting at them. After detaching the last wagon, Newt appears, and while the youngsters, including Minho, shout loudly, he starts his work. On orders, the ship continues to chase Jorge, while the soldiers stop the train and rush towards Thomas and his friends. With a plan, Jorge pulls them to a corner in the desert and, to their surprise, Fry Pan and the others disarm them and take the ship by stopping the pilot. Newt completes his task, and as the soldiers approach, Jorge suddenly appears in the sky with a ship and throws a hook. The soldiers watch in awe as they successfully attach the hook to the wagon and lift it. Opening the wagon door, Thomas finds many runners, including Eris, but unfortunately, Minho is not among them. After freeing the others, Vince gives them a heartwarming speech, assuring them that their fight is not over yet and that he plans to send a large ship within 2 days to land them on a safe island. Subsequently, Jorge inquires about Brenda's bite healing, to which she responds by revealing her ankle, and assertively declaring that she is not going to turn into a crank. During the conversation, Thomas attempts to gather details about Ava and her organization, but all Aris shares is Wicked's reference to a city known as the Last City. Johnson learns of the attack on the train but is relieved when he sees Minho, knowing that Thomas will be back to save him. Meanwhile, Thomas uses all available information to map the city, but Vince is unwilling to risk the lives of the newly rescued runners and believes that Minho's rescue operation will not be successful. Jorge claims that the Last City is the base of all Wicked organizations, and he assures that entering there is impossible. Radio waves indicate the presence of Wicked forces in the area, and the lights are immediately turned off by Vince's order. This keeps them from being identified. Thomas goes out in the middle of the night and seems to be going back alone to save his friend, but Newt finds him. Both he and Fry Pan are eager to join the mission. The next day, Minho wakes up while lying on the grass and finds himself in the glade. Confused, he looked up and realized he was back in the maze. When he sees a group of boys in the distance in front of the maze gate, he is stunned. After a kid runs next to him, Minho chases him to the hut and suddenly enters an abandoned corridor. After hearing strange noises, he notices a griever and runs away, not knowing where he is. Suddenly, he loses control of his body, and an involuntary power sticks him to the ceiling. Griever approaches him and attacks. It turns out that Wicked's doctors intentionally put him in this condition so they could extract the alleged antivirus drug from him using a new technique that involves applying pressure. Teresa, standing next to Ava, looks out from behind the window, witnessing Minho's torment as his body weakens significantly. Hours after driving on the road, they come across a big tunnel. There is a high probability of encountering a crank in the tunnel. There is no other option, so they slowly enter the tunnel and see a crank at the very beginning. After a pause as Thomas tells him to go ahead, Fry Pan presses the gas pedal, and a woman suddenly calls for help. Some cranks appear around them, prompting Fry Pan to accelerate in an attempt to drop the crank on the car. He manages to neutralize the crank, but moments later, a distraction causes the car to crash. They barely get out of the car and realize that a group of cranks are approaching behind them, so they quickly run away. Fry Pan's shots are ineffective because there are too many of them. They confront another herd in front of them, and now both sides have trapped them in a corner. There is no way to escape, and they spend difficult moments until Brenda and Jorge arrive and save them. Hours later, the team gets out of the car as they approach the Last City to check. Among other things, they see a strong and high wall that protects a large metropolis from cranks. Ava and Teresa show up to speak in a meeting with investors to convince them to continue with the cure manufacturing project. Ava informs the city owners that the disease prevalence is 300% higher, but luckily, they are close to a major breakthrough. Despite Minho's superior antibodies, the board remains suspicious, with its members believing they should allocate their resources elsewhere. Teresa interrupts, stating that safe zones will only delay the spread of the virus, not solve it. With an impressive speech, she persuades the board to continue with the project and resolve the conflict. As they approach the city walls, Thomas and his men witness an armed and rebellious movement that seems intent on confronting Wicked and capturing the last city. A large ship from Wicked searches the area, and Thomas is identified by tracking the chip around his neck. On the other hand, many are protesting outside the city gates, and their goal is to enter the safe city. Johnson learns about Thomas's presence in the middle of the crowd, and as the protesters approach the city's gates, he orders them to prepare to fire to drive them away. Newt notices the presence of some masked people around him, but the giant turrets open on the wall within seconds, and their relentless shots drive the crowd back. Everyone runs back, and the masked men immediately grab Thomas and the others and put them in their vehicles. Jorge gets into a fight with one of them and stops as soon as he realizes that Brenda is good. A moment later, a significant revelation unfolds. Gally is still alive. Shocked, Thomas immediately punches him in the face because he blames him for Chuck's death. Newt invites him to calm down and tells him that, at that time, he was out of control. Gally holds the belief that they never inquired about his survival and says, they left him to die. Newt reveals that they are here to save Minho. Subsequently, Gally proposes a potential solution. He claims that this rebel squad saved him and made him immune. The rebels have been fighting Wicked ever since they conquered the city, then he guides them to meet the leader of this rebel group. They meet Lawrence, the leader of them. Lawrence overhears their plan and says that getting into Wicked is much more difficult than getting into a different city. However, Thomas assures him that he will get in there, believing that he will benefit from the deal by buying time. They deal, but Lawrence points out that only 2 of them can enter the city. After that, Gally immediately takes Thomas and Newt through a hidden passage that leads through the sewers. Teresa enters the lab and sees an infected baby girl on the bed. She does the treatment and waits for the results. Johnson appears pleased with the experiment's results, while Ava is surprised by his eagerness to treat patients as someone who has killed a large group of people so far. She is dissatisfied with Johnson's performance because, so far, the patrols have not found any bodies. And Thomas is still alive out there. Thomas and 2 others have entered the city, and upon their arrival, Gally wants them to behave normally. They carefully climb to a certain height and observe the city's buildings and towers from this point. Gally says Lawrence has been trying to gain access to this building for years, but he has been unsuccessful. He shows Teresa at work with a camera stationed there and believes that this is the only way to gain access to Wicked. The group gathers to consult, but Thomas strongly opposes the proposal. In disbelief, Newt angrily storms at Thomas and says that Teresa has always been the center of his attention, not Minho. However, he pauses, realizes his mistake, and informs Thomas about his bite, forcing him to devise a plan to save him, but he asks him to concentrate on saving Minho. Teresa visits Minho and explains to him that their efforts have worked and that he might save a little girl. While leaving, Minho angrily calls her a traitor and attacks her. The guards swiftly enter the room to stop him, but Minho steals something from them. Subsequently, a nurse calls her, and she learns that the medication is ineffective for her. She leaves there disappointed. Outside the building, she sees Thomas and follows him, not knowing if it's him or not. Then Thomas leads her to a secluded place and reveals himself. Without delay, he asks her a question whose answer is important. Does she regret her past actions? She answers that sometimes, but her goal was to get treatment, so she will do it again. At this moment, Gally kidnaps her. Talking to Johnson, Ava worries that the air infection will infect everyone soon, and they only have a month left. She regrets that she has tormented the kids so hard to find a cure. The group decides to use Teresa to infiltrate Wicked, and since they have the identification chip around their necks, Thomas asks her to get the chips out of them. Jorge is worried that Brenda is going to participate in this mission, and he can't imagine that he might not see her one day. However, both are ready for the mission and hug each other. Teresa asks Thomas about Brenda's well-being since she has been infected for as long as she can remember. She believes that Brenda can't remain immune to this contamination until now, and that she is healthy as proof of the serious role of Thomas's blood in her recovery. Thomas, who does not trust her, is not willing to listen to her words, so at the last moment, Teresa steals a sample of his blood tissue. As the mission begins, Newt, dressed as a Wicked agent, leads Teresa to the main doors but is met with resistance from a guard. They pass anyway. Thomas and Gally also escort them, and then Teresa leads these 3 people to the restricted area. On the other hand, Frypan climbs the crane and Brenda is also trying to steal a bus at the terminal. Gully breaks into the electrical system and reveals the access of the cameras to Lawrence, who is surprised that the boys were able to do it. The 3 go to the runner's cell and kill all the attackers one by one. Newt and Thomas free them, but there is no sign of Minho, and Teresa reveals that they may have taken him to the lab. Gally claims he needs time to break into the vault, and as Newt and Thomas leave, Gally continues digging. Johnson prevents the elevator from closing and enters, surprising them, and then informs Teresa that Thomas is approaching the city, something Ava has kept from her. After getting out of the elevator, Teresa tells Thomas that his blood is unique because it heals the infected rather than delaying it. Thomas takes off his mask and tells her that she is wrong. On the other hand, Johnson seems to have noticed their movements. Thomas threatens to kill Teresa, but Johnson believes that he is bluffing because he cannot shoot Teresa. Teresa pushes Thomas and Newt inside and closes the gate. She then claims to have helped Johnson by sending them inside, trapping them. Gally leads the youths to the terminal, where Brenda appears with a bus. He advises Brenda to wait for Thomas. With the entire building locked, armed soldiers are called to the central building, but unfortunately, one of them notices the bus in the parking lot, and suspects something. While Brenda and the kids are hiding, the agents are getting closer every moment until finally Brenda decides to escape by bus and continues to escape through the streets of the city by breaking the barriers. Thomas sees Ava in the main hall, but Johnson intervenes and a fight breaks out. Minho is subjected to tests by doctors, so they plan to continue these tests until his death. Fortunately, he is awake, and to a surprise, he kills first the doctor and then the guard. Johnson's men surround Thomas and Newt. After a grenade incapacitates some of them, Minho bravely shows up to save them. The three hug each other and immediately run away, then hide in a room when confronted by Johnson. The strong metal lock buys them some time, however, the only option left is to jump from the height. Thomas breaks the glass behind him, revealing a pool. They save their lives by jumping into the pool when the door opens and Johnson can't believe it. After coming out of the pool, unfortunately, 4 guards threaten them with guns, but luckily Gally is one of them and unexpectedly startles the other 3. Brenda is still trying to escape in the streets of the city, however, many agents are chasing her and trapping her from all sides. She gets out of the car and fires a fiery light into the sky despite their warnings to surrender. Frypan notices the signal and lowers the crane hook, and then Brenda attaches it to the bus to raise it. Moments later, while the bus is suspended at a height, the hook suddenly breaks, and Frypan, in the right decision, lowers it so that the bus falls from a low height. Fortunately, everyone is alive. On the other hand, despite the escape of the runners, Johnson insists that they are not yet out of reach. Newt's condition is getting worse by the minute and his friends hope that he will continue. In the laboratory, Teresa tests Thomas's blood and gets good results. Brenda and Frypan return to Lawrence's rebel base, only to find that Thomas and the others are still inside the city. Lawrence reveals himself and announces to the people with an epic speech that this important day has arrived. His message is that Wicked started the war and they will finish it, then orders his driver to the city gates. Wicked's weapons are ready to go off, but the rebels have already hacked their systems, so Lawrence walks in and sacrifices himself to create a huge explosion, destroying a large section of the city wall. Gully informs the team that the explosion was unexpected. Ava is surprised that Teresa is still working in such a situation, but she invites her to observe an unexpected reaction. Unexpectedly, Thomas's blood cell tissue not only weakly but completely eradicates the infection. 4 runners are trapped in a street in the center of the city while the rebels from the surrounding area are attacking and taking over the city. Thomas informs Brenda that he will not make it and asks her to get the others out, but she refuses to leave him and unexpectedly informs Thomas that she is coming as their ship appears in the sky. It turns out that Vince and Jorge came back to join them. This once beautiful city is now a mixture of fire and blood, with rebels and brutal battles. Newt declares that there is no chance left for him and asks his friends to let him go, but Thomas refuses and hopes that he will be saved. He orders Minho to rush over to Brenda, grab the serum, and come back. Newt thanks Minho and Gally goes with him to support him. Newt forces Thomas to accept his necklace as a memento while Thomas still has hope for his recovery and asks him to get up. To save him, Thomas pulls him through the bullets, but within seconds, Newt collapses because he's having trouble breathing. Teresa suddenly addresses Thomas through the loudspeaker in town and announces that she has found the cure. The cure that is only in her blood. Thomas has no reason to trust her, but he has to believe what she says. She announces that he can save Newt and humanity, but suddenly Newt stops and turns around to show his transformation. Newt, who has gone through a change process, attacks Thomas, and on the other side, Minho meets Brenda and asks her to give him the serum. He desperately begs Thomas to kill him, but he doesn't. The group tries to reach Thomas but it is too late. Newt attacks Thomas with a knife, but he plunges it into his chest. Brenda reaches out to Thomas but only witnesses his tears over the loss of his best friend. Thomas picks up the gun from the ground and leaves, and Gally and the others mourn over Newt's body. In Wicked, Thomas finds Ava seemingly remorseful for her actions and tearfully drops the gun. She says that now he is the solution to everything and that the cure is in his blood. Suddenly, she is targeted from behind and it turns out that her killer is Johnson. He approaches Thomas and plunges a needle into his neck, then Thomas falls to the ground and faints as he sees Ava's body. Thomas wakes up and sees Tirsa drawing blood from him. Johnson watches the town as Thomas is tied to a chair, then claims that he is not going to kill him because he plans to use him as a resource for their own cure. Tirsa hits him on the head and frees Thomas from his restraints. Thomas attacks him and they fight each other, but in the end, he stops Thomas with a gun. The rebels target Wicked's central building with their deadly missiles, and he and Tirsa use this opportunity to escape. However, Johnson starts shooting and after dodging a bullet, Thomas realizes that he has been hit by a single bullet. He sits on the floor and Tirsa tries to stop the bleeding, then Johnson enters the lab, aware that the two are hiding. His goal is to find the serum and the cure, and by finding Tirsa, he pressures her to hand over the serum. Suddenly, Thomas throws a heavy object at him, causing the cranks to be released and attack him. Meanwhile, they quickly escape from the laboratory and climb the building but are caught in the flames so that there is no escape for them. Both of them know that their lives are coming to an end and they kiss each other. At this moment, Jorge and the team unexpectedly find them on the roof and plan to save them by opening the back hatch of the ship. Vince and Minho try to catch Thomas but he can't reach them and the building collapses next to them. Tirsa selflessly pushes him into the plane but there is no time left to save her and she falls into the building gap while staring at Thomas. Thomas faints and the last city falls. Later, Thomas wakes up in a peaceful place. He finds that his gunshot wound has healed and goes outside to witness the meticulous reconstruction of Vince's ship, while the survivors live in peace. His friends approach him and Minho hugs him. In a speech that night, Vince claims that this island is the future of humanity and that the rock behind him represents those they have lost. The safe haven welcomes everyone and allows them to experience ultimate peace. Minho gives Newt's necklace to Thomas and mentions that it fell out of his pocket. Focusing on it, Thomas realized that Newt had hidden a letter for him. Opening it, Thomas bursts into tears, but Newt reassures him with his writing that he is not afraid of death, only worried that one day his friends will forget him and the others who died along the way. He admits that the moment he saw him in the maze, he knew he had to follow him. He asks Thomas to do the right thing and never regrets anything. The next day, Thomas writes Tirsa's name among the others who didn't make it. After that, he goes to the beach and stares at the sea. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel.